Hello and welcome to Only Lovers Book Club, where me and my two additional gal pal Latinx babes talk about romance, break down romance, discuss characters, and on today's edition, try to determine where we would take our secret high school girlfriends if we wanted a moment alone with them. The three of us take turns every month picking a book, usually romance, doesn't necessarily need to fall within that box. Today we're going to be talking about my pick for the month, and the pick was We Deserve Monuments by Jazz Hammonds. Usually, sometimes we will dress in theme or eat or drink in theme. Today, we kept it light. This book has some serious topics, some serious kind of issues that are discussed. And so Andrea had the fun idea to say, hey, what if we pick where we would take our secret high school girlfriends? And if you're looking at this video on YouTube, you will see that we have a variety of backgrounds showing right now. I'll ask everyone what they've picked in a moment. But yeah, we're looking forward to this discussion, but we are not having any alcohol today because this is kind of it's a deep cut. So Chris, what did you pick and why did you pick it?
Okay, so I have gone very literal. I am in a field of sunflowers because in the cover of the book, there's quite a few sunflowers. Each of the friends picks like a flower or plant or tree to kind of like represent them in a way. And so I went with sunflowers because I love sunflowers. I had a really nice memory of going to a sunflower field with Drea back in Puerto Rico in Guanica, I feel like it was. And that was a really fun day. But then, yes, I also could see myself yes, I could see myself making sweet, sweet gay love in this field of sunflowers as well. Despite the bugs, I'm probably at this point drunk on mead, or something delicious of that sort. And we are of age and it is happening in the field. And so that's why I picked the sunflowers.
So I was thinking like where in Puerto Rico specifically, like I would want this like ideal place to be. And I really like that in the book, the like juke joint that they go to is like hard to find. You have to go on some like back roads. I imagine you have to have like 4-wheel drive. So I was kind of like envisioning that in my head. And so I have here, if you can see, a couple on a 4-track in the mountains of Rio Grande, because I was picturing like the kind of place you can only get to like in 4-track or on horseback. It's like is that kind of place. It's like muddy dirt road kind of situation. And it's nice and cool because you're pretty high up in the mountains. So yeah, that's what I picked for my background.
So my background is like a weird mystical forest wishing well type situation. The scenario in my mind would be that I or the person I'm dating live in like an old house that is probably on some big property, and then we like found a well hidden in the undergrowth of trees, and it has become our place where we go to make wishes. So stealing the idea from the book, but making it a well instead of a tree in a river. Thank you for giving me a breakdown of why you chose your backgrounds. Now I picked this book. It's by Jazz Hammonds. We're going to give you a quick breakdown of the author and the story. If you guys want to split amongst yourselves who's going to be covering what, so that it's not just my voice droning on.
We Deserve Monuments by Jazz Hammonds. Family secrets, a swoon-worthy romance, and a slow burn mystery collide in We Deserve Monuments, a YA debut from Jazz Hammonds that explores how racial violence can ripple down through generations. What's more important, knowing the truth or keeping the peace? 17-year-old Avery Anderson is convinced her senior year is ruined when she's uprooted from her life in DC and forced into the hostile home of her terminally ill grandmother, Mama Letty. The tension between Avery's mom and Mama Letty makes for a frosty arrival and unearths past drama and trauma they refuse to talk about. Every time Avery tries to look deeper, she's turned away, leaving her desperate to learn the secrets that split her family in two. While tempers flare in her avoidant family, Avery finds friendship in unexpected places. In Simone Cole, her captivating next door neighbor, and Jade Oliver, the daughter of the town's most prominent family, whose murder remains unsolved. As the three girls grow closer, Avery and Simone's friendship blossoming into romance, the sharp edged opinions of their small southern town begin to hint at something insidious underneath. The racist history of Bardell, Georgia is rooted in Avery's family in ways she can't even imagine. With Mama Letty's health dwindling every day, Avery must decide if digging for the truth is worth toppling the delicate relationship she's built in Bardell, or if some things are better left buried. I read that.
I read that.
When I started the book, I remember telling Shaka, I'm like, Shaka, this is what's going down in this book so far. And he was like, wait, is this a romance? And I was like, yes, it just also has murder. Jazz has an official one and an unofficial one on their website, and I'm going to go with the unofficial one because I think it's cuter. It says, hi, I'm Jazz, pronounced like jazz with 2 Z's. I like writing about messy families and queer characters and finding magic in the mundane. When I'm not writing, I enjoy reading, working on jigsaw puzzles, riding my bicycle, and making my surroundings as cozy as possible. I'm a flight attendant by day and early morning and late night, and I love exploring bookstores and coffee shops in every city I visit. I'm a sucker for autumn and rainy days and fuzzy socks.
If We Deserve Monuments sounds like something you want to read, this is your spoiler warning. We are going to discuss the book at length, including the ending. So if you don't want to get spoiled, make sure to pause the episode here, grab a copy, read or listen to it, and then come back and let us know what you think and listen to our episode. I also want to issue a content warning. We Deserve Monuments has instances of racism, homophobia, death of a parent, cancer, and police brutality. So take care when you're reading that, but also as we are discussing the episode.
Why did I pick this book? I don't remember. I think I was just trying to find a book that would be a fun way to start off the year. And I had looked at a couple of titles that looked fun, but none of them were going to be available in time. It was stuff that was going to be ready later on in the year. And then I stumbled onto this posting. I'm certain at some point one of you probably shared the cover, and I remembered the cover existed when I saw this again and thought, oh, okay, I know that this is something that people have been anticipating or have been talking about, so let me look into it. And I did not realize it was going to be that deep. I didn't expect this book to be such a serious one, tonally speaking, because once again, I didn't read the full description of it. I just picked it, which is what happened the last time I picked a book. That was very unexpected. But I was pleasantly surprised because there was romance involved in the story, and it wasn't a froofy, like sugary romance. There was like intensity and serious topics around the romance. There was a lot of like sapphic content happening. And I think that the conversations that happened in the book were really interesting and also really necessary. A lot of stuff got brought up that I didn't expect to get in a book like this, and I thought the style was also really good. So I'm super happy I was able to get this at my local library, which is like 5 minutes away. I looked real cool leaving the building with my book in my hand, showing off the cover. So yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, and I would like to know what your overall impressions are before we start getting into the plot and the questions that I have and anything you guys specifically might want to talk about.
I'm not rating books this year, but if I was rating it, this would be a 5-star read for me. I read it late last year, actually. I read it in December. Not because I was trying to be first or anything, but I mean, I did read this before everybody else. But no, I like you, Tashai. I really liked it stylistically. I love the way that Jazz wrote the book, like just from a writing perspective. I will definitely be reading whatever they put out next, whether or not it's with Only Lovers. That's how much I like the book. So yeah, I literally have nothing negative to say about this book. I loved it 100% with all my heart and am kind of a little bit obsessed with the author now. So
So I finished this book last. It's okay. I was dragging my feet on it. I had heard enough from I think both of you in our group chat to know that it was going to be like a heavier book than I mean, I feel like it's unfair to say it was a heavier book because I feel like a lot of the YAs that we've read together have that same kind of descriptor where, there is an aspect of romance, but there's like something else going on, like I'm catfishing somebody, I'm fake dating somebody and learning and, accepting my fat body, like it's always something. But I do think that this one kind of kicks it up a notch because of the family drama. It doesn't feel like a superfluous family drama. It felt very much grounded in like politically what is happening, what has always been happening. It's got a lot to do with racism, and and the fears that queer people have about coming out to their friends and families, and how that will affect our lives, and the choices that you make affecting like the rest of your life, and then the whole sense about like being able to come back home. So it was a whole big basket of just lots of big heavy hitting themes. But that being said, I really liked it. I enjoyed it. I dragged my feet because I'm that way when it comes to like movies and things that I know are going to make me emotional. Like I try to avoid. I just want to gloss over. Um but with this one, it was all right. I'm learning to engage more this year anyway. But I enjoyed the story. I like the direction that the author took it in. Um, I think because I was reading very quickly, because I wanted to make sure I was, had read it before book club. There were some parts that I felt a little bit confused about, especially the ending, which I already talked about it with you guys about like, like the weight of that ending and what the implications and ramifications were. I think maybe if I'd read it with enough time and talked about it prior to book club, I would have been like, oh, but that being said, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't ever rate books. I just keep a list of the books that I've read, whether I've loved them or hated them. So I also agree that this was
Awesome. I'm also glad that we read this book, and it made me feel like I was reading some important stuff, like it felt like the family dynamics made a lot of sense. I think there was a lot of painful band-aids being pulled in the course of the story for the characters, and I think it was very like informative and educational in different ways to read through these different perspectives. So I got a couple of questions for you guys. We'll see how many we can get through before we all get sleepy, except for Christina, because she lives in the past, so she's fine. So starting off, we have a pretty diverse cast of characters. We have a lot of different age demographics, like there's a good amount of perspectives we get in this book too. But talking specifically about the main cast, so like Avery, Simone, Jade, and then Mama Letty. Who was your favorite? And did you feel a certain way about this cast of characters when you started reading? Because I always get nervous when I'm reading almost like an ensemble cast book, that I'm not going to get as much as I want from every character. I feel like oftentimes one character is kind of underwritten compared to the others. So I was curious if you guys felt that there was enough attention for like each of the characters in that main friend group. And then who was your favorite? Did you have a favorite character? Was it one of the main cast members? Was it someone on the sidelines?
My favorite was Mama Letty. That was my favorite character literally from the start. I think in general, I just liked her character. I liked how it was described. I understood why she was the way she was, where she was coming from. But then sort of in a more removed perspective, I really appreciated a kids book with a grandmother who is not like the super loving grandmother that you see like every day of your childhood, because I feel like as someone who reads a lot of middle grade and YA, the loving grandparent tends to be way more common than this kind of relationship where they don't have a relationship, period. And so I really appreciated that in the book, because not everybody has great relationships with their grandparents. And I think it's just nice representation for kids to see that, like, not every like family and grandparent relationship is as perfect as like the media makes it seem, or their friends. So I appreciated that kind of really just very nuanced, dicey pros and cons kind of relationship. But yeah, she was my favorite. I loved her start to finish as a character, if not always personally. Like Andrea in real life would have been crying in her room every night. Like, why does this person not love me? Like, I would have been sobbing every night. But Andrea, the reader, really liked her.
So I think that both Avery's mom and grandmother reminded me too much of my mom and my grandmother and their relationship. It's like it's identical. It's a whole different issue, but they've had the same conversations, the same fights, the same explosions have happened around me. So that was actually a little tough to read at times, because those conversations I've like literally lived them in our house. I like Simone. I really liked Simone. I thought that she was super cute and felt like a teenager. I liked how connected to astrology she was. I just really liked everything about her. Honestly, I thought that she was great. And for a little while there, I wasn't sure if like Jade, or like I was wondering who was going to be the. Yes, I forgot about I read the description before we started talking, and I was like, oh, of course it says Simone right here. But like I forgot when I started reading it. I was like, oh, who is it going to be? And I was like hoping it would be Simone. So yeah, because she's really cute, really lovable, and I guess similarly to what Dre was saying, like felt like a real character, like real person. Panic about what's my mom gonna think, what's gonna happen if XYZ comes out. I want to protect my friend. I felt like her worries were all valid. Like they were all just like very valid reasons to maybe want to keep something to yourself, or not being ready to talk to somebody about something. And then I felt like, yeah, I really enjoyed that character. And I didn't find it to be like a shallow love interest. I was like, oh, this feels like a well-formed, fully formed person.
Yeah, and going to the second part of your question, like I loved all. I felt like I got to know and understand to varying levels of depth, but I did get to know and understand all the characters. I especially really, really loved like the side plot line of her mom and Simone's mom. Like I would say I wanted like more, but like really I don't, because like it's not gonna end like, they're both in like different places. It lo que pasó, pasó, it's like I don't want to read like that tragedy, but also like every time that it was mentioned, my heart would just ache. It was just like so painful. But like that's what I'm saying, like Jazz does so well, is like these characters, we're giving such few scenes together, and I was still like so invested. And I felt that way, like I appreciated that in contrast, we also got to see the relationship between Avery's mom and dad. And like, I could totally see why they were together, and like that they had so I don't know. I got to see like everybody's kind of interactions with everybody else, like her dad and her grandma, her mom and her grandma, like mom and dad. And I don't know. It's just, I thought it was really well done. And you're right. There were a lot of characters, but I knew who everybody was. I understood where everybody like lay, in the scheme of things. And again, I think Jazz can do no wrong,
I agree. I actually think that's probably one of the reasons why I like this cast of characters so much, is because it was a really good job of making well-rounded characters who you remembered when they weren't the main component of what you were reading. When we were reading about one character, we still knew who the other ones were. And when they came back into a scene, it's not like I've had to do in previous books where I had to skip back a few pages and be like, who the fuck is talking right now? Like here it was very straightforward as to who was doing what, and it was done really well. Chris, when you started talking about the astrology part of Simone's personality, I'm like, well, yeah, that's you. Like that was you in high school. with like the astrology and the
Yeah, I had big
music.
books on astrology. I did not make the connection. Now that you mention it.
You were into the same stuff. You would definitely have dated Simone if you could. Like if opportunity had presented itself in life. Like it also didn't occur to me until you brought it up that there are some parallels in like your own experiences. So definitely apologies.
I think of Chris, like I think of you, Chris, as having such a deep connection with your grandparents that like you're right, I didn't make the connection of like, well, that doesn't mean your mom and your grandma have a good relationship.
Just to say like,
Oh, it's
yo,
okay.
it like did not occur to me when I was reading it until you just said it right now. And I'm like, fuck, this was probably way harder for you to read.
It was
than I
tough. It was a
thought.
hard read. I dragged my feet because I was like, oh, this is gonna be sad. It took me a while to get started.
Yeah.
I was listening to it and I was like, this is too serious for me to listen, right? Sometimes it's like, okay, I don't want to hear it. I just want to feel like detached
Yeah.
from it. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna read it. And then yeah, no, my mom and my grandmother, they're doing okay now because the fight has gone out of both of them. But my entire life, their relationship has been like very much like this, like very much like resentments. That whole thing about like being able to forgive each other, like when they were at the beach, that part made me cry because that's what I've always wanted. Like I've been Avery. Sorry, I'm gonna cry. I've been
Oh,
That's okay. I've been in the position where I've been telling my mom, like, why can't you just forgive her so that we can all just move on? Like,
yeah.
why can't you just do it like you're a grown up? Why can't you do it? I understand her better now, you know, and how that's just not so easy. But yeah, it was, it was a little bit of a roller coaster. But I still liked it, you know. Again, trying to engage more, and it's okay if it's like makes me sad or whatever. It parallels a lot. But yeah, no, I'm good. I'm okay.
Don't worry, Chris. The February book is just light smut.
No,
Light smut.
I'm not scared. I'm not scared.
There's not gonna be any heaviness.
I knew there was gonna be like a cranky grandmother. I did not realize how deeply they would go into all of it. Because typically, when you get a story that is YA that involves a grandparent, you get like hints about what has happened, and then things get fixed. The child saves the store, and the family doesn't have to worry about money, and so everything is okay now, and the family can forgive each other. With this one, there was like so much work that had to be put in. So I appreciate where it went, but yeah, this was definitely like a very well written.
I also thought it did a good job of like showing how, because I think it happens a lot, right? That like the way someone parents their child is not the same way that they grandparent their grandchild. So like the way that she was like, whatever, Avery's gay, you know, versus like how she reacted with her own daughter, I think is a very realistic portrayal of like many grandparents now who are way more chill about things that, you know, they might have been abusive physically, emotionally, you know, psychologically, whatever, with their own kids, you know, but just like los años, you know, and now it's like 40 years later and they're like, well, whatever. So I thought that was really well done too, because I mean, yeah, I know in my family, like my paternal grandparents, like I've always had a great relationship with them, but like if they had done the things that they did to my dad and my aunts and uncles, like today, they would have gotten arrested. Like CPS would have gotten called. You know what I mean? But like the way that they were as parents, as young immigrant parents who came from Cuba with like nothing and were under like a lot of stressors, understandably, mucha gente en la casa. But like the way they were as parents, noche y dia, with how they were as grandparents to us. So it's like, I don't know, you know, people grow up and are a little bit different. So I thought that part was really well done too.
Again, now that I'm older, it's just age. It's just experience. Like you're just not the same person after a few generations. Like
I also just think grandparents don't think that a wild grandchild is going to reflect on them.
Mm-hmm.
gonna reflect on their child. But at that point, it's like,
Yeah,
I don't know,
that's true.
like people aren't gonna talk about me, they're gonna talk about my kid. And I did what I could, I did my best to raise him. If the grandkid's doing
Mhm.
something else, like, esa no es mi responsabilidad. It's like
Yeah.
there's a middleman there.
Yeah. And this doesn't really have to do with characters or anything, but I did think that the story did a really good job of not excusing someone for their terrible behavior just because they were dying, and also showing that process of dying, which it can be pretty harrowing. We read in my other book club, Queerthology, where You Died. It was one of the first books we read together. It was about death positivity and that, or death neutrality. And I thought it was interesting because a lot of people don't get to be bedside when their loved ones pass away, um and I liked that they showed kind of like that there was still humor in the process, even though it was like crushingly sad. Like it was a crushingly sad moment because Avery's trying to connect with her grandmother. Her grandmother is not the easiest person to open up to, and has had morally dubious decisions in the past. Um, and even so, like her passing still affected the family. And she was sad about it, and Avery's mom was sad about it. But they were still able to treat it with some lightness. Like they were prepared for it, and it still happened, and it was still like tough, but it happened, and then they were able to kind of like move on even further into moving on from whatever was holding that conflict between all of them. So I thought that was cool. I thought that was cool.
Following the same like river of thought that poked out earlier about Avery's mom and Carol. Did you know that did either of you imagine that there were going to be like queer undertones to that relationship? Because as I was reading, the reaction between the two felt like that of someone who would have had some sort of like additional relationship going on. But I couldn't tell if it was going to be something where they had dated or if they had been like experimenting with each other, because there is kind of a fine line in relationships and friendships when you're younger, where it's kind of like you could just be soulmates but platonically just loving on each other, and people will read into it and will put a filter over it and read into it and assume that they know what's going on. So part of me was like, oh yeah, like maybe one of them is, or maybe they did date. Oh, I don't know. I was like waiting for the reveal. But because Mama Letty was so chill with Avery, I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't figure out if it was gonna be or if it wasn't gonna be. So I was curious if you guys just like knew before I did where this was gonna go, or if you had hints that it was going to go somewhere, and how you feel about it. If you feel like it added to the story and like the tension, or if it took away from Avery's own like queer journey.
I definitely knew that that's where it was going. I agree. The minute they like ran into each other, like on the doorstep, and I agree, that was like a charged introduction for sure. And then that combined with the fact that like her mom never mentioned this woman like ever in Avery's whole life. You know what I mean? Like it was just weird. I was like, there's a reason this lady has not been mentioned. And so I figured there was something there. And then once we got to the scene where like they had that moment where like Carol was like resting her head on her shoulder, then I was like, okay, so the fight with the mom was over like them doing something. Like that's when it was like, okay, like for sure then that's what the fight is. Because that like confirmed like, okay, there was a relationship, this is probably what went down. I liked that that was the cause of their conflict because like I said, I think that is very realistic. I think there are a lot of grandparents who would not have been okay with their kids coming out as queer, but now have queer grandchildren and react in a much different way. So I thought it was very realistic. I thought it added to, even if I knew what was going on, Avery certainly did not. And I think it was so hard for Avery to wrap her head around it because her grandma was like totally fine with her being queer. So I thought it really worked in that scenario because it let the reader know what was going on without Avery knowing what was going on, and just making the whole dynamics between the three like so much more complex. And then also it like broke my heart once she mentioned how like when she told her mom she was queer, her mom went and like cried in the shower. I was like, she's thinking of Carol.
Oh
It
yeah.
just like broke my heart. I was like, that was not about Avery at all. It was literally mom crying over her ex, and it was so sad. But anyway, yes, I did know, but it did not take away anything from the story for me.
Listen, I didn't know. I had a feeling that I had a feeling that it might have been something, but until Avery sees them at the hotel, I was like, get out of here. Are you serious? Like, good. In this edition of Christina is Stupid, I was like, oh shit, they must have had like a terrible fight. And I thought that the fight that happened between Avery's mom and Mama Letty was about the gun or something. You know what I mean? So or was about like her finding out something that had to do with like Ray, because she never wanted to talk about Ray.
Yeah. And they always
and
fought about it. Yeah.
and they always fought about it. So I
Mhm.
thought that the fight had to do with Ray, and that Carol's mom, nope, Carol, period. That's her name. I just thought that the moms had a fight and had a falling out, but not necessarily that they were together. Once Avery sees them at the hotel, I was like, wait a minute. Hang on a second. It took me a little while to
I mean,
took me a
to
little
be
while to
fair,
get there.
like their fight was definitely not just about one thing, right? Like there's so
Yeah.
much going on between them that like
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say that like we don't really know what was like la última gota, you know, because there was clearly like a lot of stuff going on in that house.
Yeah. Plus,
Like, a lot.
when like I understand, because I understand if that was like the big fight that they'd had before Avery's mom left the house, but they were coming
Mhm.
back and she was already a married woman with a child. And so I just couldn't imagine the fight being about gay shit. You know what I mean? You know, like, what the fuck, who cares? She's already married. Like, she's already fulfilled her like hetero check mark.
Oh,
in
no,
in
no.
a
Yeah,
sense.
no, you're right. The fight once she already had I sorry, I didn't know what fight you were talking about. Yes, that fight was about the gun.
Okay. So I just
Yes,
thought
the one where she comes back and Avery's like a little kid, and then they just like hightail it out of there with like the plane. That was about the
Wait,
gun.
that was
Yes.
about the gun?
yeah, because
Like,
that's
or
when the
well,
murder
she like
happened.
found out. Yeah, like she finds out. Like she knew. Like Avery's mom knew this entire time that her mom had murdered this lady.
Yeah.
No,
'Cause
I
I
think
know
she didn't
it was-
believe that it was like a revenge tit for tat thing because she didn't believe her dad had been murdered by these people, but like she knew what her mom had done.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because I know that the revenge plot happened when she was older. Because the way that it's described, it happened years later. Like you know
Yeah.
that this woman had already had a child because she was murdered by the time Jade was like a young kid.
Mhm.
But I was trying to figure out what I don't think I ever realized that she maybe had like found the gun or something. But now that you're saying it, I know that you
No,
mentioned
like
the box getting
she
thrown.
left the house. The gay thing happened, and then she leaves the house. But
Yes.
then
She
like
comes
she
back to
comes
introduce
back with
herself.
the kid and like figures out what was happening, and then I guess in her head was like, "Bueno, I'm not gonna turn you into the cops, but like, bye. This is the last time you will see me in this house."
Yeah.
Yeah,
There was a
like
lot of
the
stuff
crazy
going on.
story.
Mhm.
So, because of all of that, I did not think immediately that the moms had been a thing when they were teens. Then afterwards, I was like, oh, okay, it's just a lot. Big old delicious stew of drama.
Delicious indeed. Okay, since we're talking about that revelation, how did you guys feel about the ending? Because I was left conflicted and then had to go back and reread it a couple times because I thought I was misunderstanding it. And then it kind of It took me a bit to digest it. And then I was trying to decide if, with the revelation, if my image of the grandmother had changed because of it. And then thinking about how that must have been, a similar experience that Avery's mom had too. Like, not only have I had this abusive relationship with you, but now you're a murderer. Like, now you've killed somebody. And how am I supposed to work through my own resentments and drama with you when you like have done this crazy, crazy thing that like I could have tried to talk you out of it, like the insanity that comes from like that revelation. I can't imagine it experiencing myself, because even having a small taste of it at the end of this book, I had to go back and reread it like 3 times. So I just wanted to know how you guys felt about it, because I think for the purposes of the book, I was down with it. But then I feel really bad because the mom didn't do anything. But it is one of those like an eye for an eye type of things, even though it didn't necessarily achieve what she wanted to achieve. So what do you guys think?
Mira, I
I
felt so bad for Jade because she's just been she gets her mom murdered by someone who like thinks it's his revenge plot, but actually it only hurts Jade. And then like her best friend starts secretly dating, first of all doesn't tell her that she's queer, and then starts secretly dating like their mutual friend, breaking their dating promise. And then it turns out the other friend grandpa was murdered by her grandparents, and then Jade never even found out about Mama Letty's murder, because I feel like that would have been la gotita. Like, I don't know what Jade would have done if it's like a fourth thing, but like that girl had to go through a lot in this book. And like, I get she's rich and has all these things going for her, but like I still felt real bad for her. Like that was because she was like a good kid and she had all these shitty things happen to her.
She's just trying to undo her family's racism and bullshit, one kind act at a time. And then she's like, well, we never found my mom's murderer, but hopefully I can help.
She literally suspects her dad. I thought, and then whenever they talked about it, that made me so like sad for her too. Mm-hmm. Like, I obviously don't want to lose sight of the real tragedy here, which is that Ray was fucking brutally murdered, and like did they ever even recover his body? Right? No, he was.
They didn't. So, that's why Avery's mom was always like, you don't know that he got murdered. Like, we never found a body. Like, se pudo haber caído un río. We don't know.
Yeah. So, yeah, it just was, I felt bad for Jade, and in the same way, in a different way, I guess, that I felt bad for Ray for getting murdered. And then I felt bad for, because of that moment, right? Rippled out throughout all of the characters' lives, It rippled out into Avery's mom's life because Letty wasn't able to kind of like overcome this loss. It affected, Mama Letty's like state of mind, what she felt like she had to do to get closure. And in so doing, kind of like really altered this other child's life. And it's just cycles of violence, right? It's just kind of like one of those things where I can understand why Mama Letty would have done that. But I mean, even with that understanding, still knowing that it was wrong. When Avery finds the gun, right? I was like, get out of here. No. Like, it was very much similar to me realizing that Avery's mom and Carol were together. I was like, no way. Are you kidding me? I mean, none of the characters in the mid chapters where you kind of like follow one person along, they don't repeat a lot, right? It's usually just one person's point of view, if that. And then kind of like, just kind of like focus in on a one person, and then we kind of like back out and see the bigger picture, right? And so I was like, man, I wonder when we're going to get a Mama Letty chapter. And when it was the last one, I was like, oh shit, she fucking did it. And, I was like, oh my God, Megan and Chuck And it's strange because usually for a young adult, right, the ending feels a little lighter. All of the patching up that they did, all of the things that they kind of like had to overcome, even temporary, even if it was just temporarily, like that happy feeling of everything's going to be all right was like gone from me.
Did they just stop being
Yes.
friends? Damn, that was a very intense season of friendship.
Yeah, because they finish college, they go to college, and then because Jade's not at the hotel
They're all in
anymore,
different places.
yeah, and then so the memory of her mom
I
starts
know they paint
fading.
over the monument. I know they paint over the mural.
Yeah.
And they eventually, like, they were trying to petition to get the grandparents monument built, and they were like, no.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a sad last fucking chapter. I was like, what the fuck?
Basically, Simone went to Spelman, like she had wanted, and then Amelia went to, oh sorry, not Amelia. What's the name of the Jade? Jade went to art school in New York City and never came back to Bardell. And then Avery became a park ranger in like national forests.
Cool.
So it just seemed like they went like completely like different states, like different careers, and like
Yeah, because Avery didn't know what she wanted to do. Gosh. Well, having gone through all of the story, and this isn't a question, I think this is more just like a thought that I was trying to understand the idea of monuments, and I think the way that it ends with Grandma Letty's little vignette where it's talking about like the last words she would write, it's almost like I don't think that I had interpreted monuments as like remembering. Like it's not just, oh, we deserve monuments because we deserve recognition. It's we deserve to be remembered. Like our stories deserve to be remembered too. And I think looking at it from that point of view, then the fact that Ray's murder was like never solved, was never recognized, was never seen as something that actually happened, it's crazy because the same thing happens to Jade's mom, and you get this big mural. You get all these efforts made to try to like preserve her memory, but none of that was ever an option for Ray because he was like a Black man that was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
So I think now I'm gonna be like thinking back onto the book, and it's gonna like synthesize more in my deep brain of like, wow, there's so much more depth to this, because I'm like, oh yeah, she wants to like get a monument made to like her mom, but it's like, oh shit, it's not even, it's like what it represents.
Yeah.
It's the permanence of our lives, and like who doesn't deserve that. Do you think a no dating policy would work in a friend group? Because I read that part and I immediately was like,
I feel like I read that a lot in YA and it always gets broken. Like it's never like successful. It's just like a plot device.
it's corny.
No way. No, not in your life. Nope.
I haven't met anyone in real life that has one, but I've seen it a lot in books. And again, it's always just like a plot device to set up the fight for when one person inevitably starts like secretly dating someone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean,
that was like in the kissing booth, they're like, we have the rules of our relationship. Rule number 17, you can never hook up with my brother. I'm like, that's a real specific rule.
Nah, it's not a thing. I don't believe it's a thing. And it might be a young person thing, but I don't think it's actually a thing.
No,
having been a young person myself at one point a long time ago.
I think it's a writer thing.
Yeah, it's a writer thing. I would agree with that.
I've known you. My last question was if
I have had this conversation with Shaka so many times. Yeah, he is very clear on the fact that if he gets murdered, I will not be seeking revenge. I will not be doing anything. I will probably just write a sad book about it. Whereas I am clear that if I get murdered, he will go out, like all those movies where like the guy like loads himself up with 5 guns and like takes off into the sunset and won't rest until his wife's like that's exactly what he would do. And I have tried to talk him out of it. I'm like, you know, like you don't want to be in jail. Like then their kids, you know, your kids will never see you, and like all these people. He is adamant that if I get murdered, he is 100% murdering that person.
That's understandable. I would absolutely hunt
I
down.
mean, if I know who did it,
Exactly. I would
Where like the evidence points to
exactly right.
I
I
would
wouldn't.
No, I would leave town. I would leave town so I never have to see this person again.
I would definitely. Yes, I'm not above. I don't want to. I mean, I'm not admitting to anything. Let's just let this be said. This is in the context of the book and the book only. So if this doesn't like age well because something happened in the future, I'm just talking about how I feel about it today. No, I'm not above it. I would absolutely, yeah, if someone did like some awful shit to my sister or any of y'all and like justice wasn't served, I'm gonna go find it. I'm gonna go find that justice. I would not, I don't know if I'd go as far as like, involving someone who wasn't completely involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would just be kind of like doing the same shit. But like, let's say, yeah, somebody like does something awful and gets away with it, and I know who it is, I'm gonna make it my life's mission to ruin their lives.
I think I decided that I wouldn't necessarily like kill the person, but I would try to find a way to like ruin that person's life.
I
I'd
would
set them up so that,
psychologically torment them. I would just make their life a living hell. They would not want to be around.
catfish them, and then I would have them get arrested for like soliciting from a minor.
No,
No,
I
I
would
would
absolutely
definitely
harass
try to
them.
be like a la Hard Candy,
Yeah.
Ellie Page classic of like, Mister, I'm just a 13-year-old child. Oh no. Tee-hee-hee. Locks the door. Okay. That's all I had as far as questions for We Deserve Monuments. Is there anything else you guys wanted to chat about? Any pending questions that we didn't dive into? I tried to cover a character's plot and the bananas ending to the best of my ability.
Oh,
so,
I think the only thing I would add, because I don't think we talked about like setting, but I thought the setting was really well done too. Like this felt like any of the small towns surrounding where I live, like rural central Virginia, sounds a lot like rural Georgia. So I just thought that those descriptions, like the atmosphere, the setting was spot on too.
Yeah, I really liked it too. It felt very humid. Like just reading it felt very like sticky. Like
I could tell. Yes.
I've been in this heat before. This sounds familiar to me.
Yeah, and the dance club restaurant, safe haven for queer folks. I really like that. I really like that area. I thought that was a sweet place, and yeah, I kind of want to go.
I love that too. That was like, this is the safe space where you go and like queerness thrives, and you're brown and you're black and you're beautiful. And I was like, Carol, stop pretending you're straight.
Yeah, but aside from the setting being really great, aside from like the Rennie being super cool, I did like that Avery's dad just always knew his place, and I kept kind of waiting for him to act up, and he never did, and I only have to say thank you to Jazz for that, because I could not deal with one more goddamn thing. I liked it when Mama June was like, you went off and you married this white man and you never came back here. Da, da, da. And he could have interjected and he could have tried to be the peacekeeper like more forcefully. I think he was just trying to support everybody in the most unobtrusive way possible.
Yes.
And I do think that it was cool that Avery calls him out. She's like, oh, you're always leaving. He's like, I gotta make money. Like, well, I have to make money. But also understanding that, certain things couldn't happen if he was there. This is not like his place. And so I like that he was very much out of the drama picture and was still supportive of his wife and of his daughter, but definitely did not become that white guy, that white husband, and like am I the asshole Reddit poster, not that. I appreciated that didn't happen.
No, I was when they first mentioned moving there, literally the first thing I wanted to do was like, what are these people doing for money? Like they're just, you know, they're still paying their DC place, and now they're just like up and leaving for Georgia. So that's like such a small thing, but I was like so thankful that there were like very logical explanations, like, okay, mom is like doing remote like classes and like writing research and shit like that, and then the dad actually leaves to go do like his freelance gigs, and I was like, okay, cool. It just made it, I don't know, I needed that to also, because everything else was like so realistic that I was just very pleased to have that make sense too, because I wanted them to be in Georgia, but I also wanted it to make sense financially for them to be in Georgia.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you guys for reading this book with me. I had a really good time and I learned a lot and I cried a little. Not today when I was reading the book. I'll cry after this. Who knows? I'll be remembering and reminiscing in this. Fill me in on what your current reads are. I'm reading Crying in H Mart, and I downloaded like 2 or 3 library loans that I'm probably not going to be able to finish. So let's just say Crying in H Mart for now.
I found myself reading a book by a white man. It's called Curse of the Reaper. And it's a horror novel where an actor who's played like a type of like that's like Freddy Krueger or like Jason Voorhees. He's like the murderer in the movie, and then he's played it for the entire franchise, and now he's he's kind of like a has-been. He does like the convention circuit, and he finds out that they're remaking the franchise but not with him, and so they're remaking it with this guy who's just kind of getting out of rehab, and then the Reaper starts showing up and actually murdering people, and is it actually the Reaper or is it this fucking old guy just going crazy and killing everybody because he's feels like he doesn't have a purpose anymore? Like, it's really an engrossing story, but it's also like very B movie, like, oh, I gotta know what happens now. But I wouldn't say it's like stellar writing.
All right, well, I'm reading 2 things. I'm reading What My Bones Know, a memoir of healing from complex trauma. And it's about having complex PTSD. So it's like very depressing, but in a very beautiful way, because the author is an actual writer, like who's been writing professionally for her whole career. And I always think that memoirs by people who are already writers just hit different. So I've been appreciating that, even though I'm still shook that complex PTSD is not an actual medical diagnosis. And then in a lighter mood, I am also reading Be Real, Macy Weaver.
Well, that wraps up this episode of Only Lovers Book Club. Thank you so much for making it to the end and spending some time with us during this very heavy discussion. We will see you next month when we read something from a repeat author here at Only Lovers. But until then, bye. Thank you for hanging out with us. You can support Only Lovers Book Club by dropping some change in our tip jar and buying some books with our bookshop link. You can find us on Instagram at Only Lovers Book Club, and from there, find our individual accounts and projects. Feel free to favorite or rate us if that's an option for you, but always make sure to like and subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode.